I just want to say real quick, how about those
Chiefs.
Chiefs? I gotta say, when we made those predictions last week, I didn't actually think you were going to be almost dead nuts on your prediction as far as the score went.
Yeah, I was pretty satisfied with that, actually. I mean, I was happy the Chiefs won, of course, but I was like, wow, I was almost right on the nose with that. So, for those of you who missed the last show, I predicted the final score to be 24-21 in the Super Bowl. It was 25-22 in favor of the Chiefs. So, I wasn't right on the nose, but I was about as close as you can get without being right on.
Yeah, it was overall was a good game. I enjoyed it. Real quick shout out to my boy Travis Kelsey and to Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes on getting ring number 3. With that being said, let's start the fucking show.
All right, and we are back. So, of course, we talked about it last week that if it was a pretty quiet week in the NHL, I would just do a solo show. Wouldn't be much of a big deal. We would just kind of roll with it like that. But this week in hockey was an absolute tire fire, so we had to wait till you got back from your little trip you guys took, Andrew. But we have a lot to go over this week, so I want to jump right into it without any hesitation. First of all, real quick, how was your trip?
Oh, it was pretty good. First time in LA. I got to see some pretty cool things. I mean, we went out there to see some family. But I was like, I'm not going to LA for the first time and not go sightseeing. So I got to see some pretty cool things. I stayed as far away from the LA Kings as I could while I was there.
Yeah, you don't want
And
your goaltending to dry up.
yeah, I just got to say that whole city is absolutely decked out head to toe in Shohei Ohtani stuff right now. That is all Dodgers right now. But
Understandable.
overall, great trip. But I'm happy to be home. We just got home about an hour and a half ago. So
Yeah.
pretty tired, but I'm excited to get this show rolling, man.
I was going to say no time off for you. You're like, God, that was such a long trip. Anyways, hockey.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, with that being said, speaking of hockey, we have a lot of it to talk about. So, we're going to start the show by talking about the Florida Panthers, who are on an absolute heater right now. Coming out of the All-Star break, they are on fire. In their last 10 games, they are 9-1-0, and they have won 11 road games in a row. Including five straight wins, and that's just in general, not on the road. But that's 5 straight wins for the Panthers. Andrew, this is your baby here, man. This is your second favorite team. You watch a ton of their games. What have you seen? What have you liked?
Well, it'd be easier for me to tell you what I haven't liked because I've just been absolutely blown away as of late by this team. If you would have told me when my wife and I started going to Panthers games back in, I believe it was 2016, 2017, when we were still living in Florida, I mean, they were bottom of the barrel, man. And no way in hell would I have been like, oh yeah, less than 10 years, these guys are going to be cup favorites. I'm just absolutely blown away by now. They are so fun to watch. It's nice seeing not only them fill up the Amerant Bank Arena, which I've seen when they couldn't draw 5,000 fans to, and now they're selling it out. But on top of that, you look at the game they played against Tampa a couple days ago, where they absolutely smoked them 9-2. And a good portion of that arena was full of Panthers fans. You never used to see that. This is a completely different team, and this is a team that wants a championship. They want revenge and redemption for last year, and they are playing the kind of hockey that's going to get them there right now. Let's take a look at this right now. We got Sam Reinhart leading the team with 39 goals. This guy is someone of a different breed this season. You got Kachuk leading the team in assists with 44. He's a plus minus 14, but 44 assists nonetheless. I saw an interview not too long ago when he was starting to heat back up. It was a post-game interview with Paul Maurice, and somebody asked him, how do you feel now that Kachuk's back? And Paul Maurice was like, he was never gone. He's
He
always been
wasn't.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and just to touch on Kachuk, you mentioned the plus minus. He gets a lot of power play time from what I understand. I mean, that's got to be a
Yes.
part of the reason that number's not higher. And I'm not saying he's a defensive guru and that, he should have a higher plus minus, but guys that play on the power play that much, it's not uncommon to see a lower end plus minus. So I wouldn't put too much stock into that. But from what I've seen of Florida, I mean, this is exactly the team we saw from March till June last year. They got healthy right after the trade deadline, and they just took off and never looked back. They blew right through everybody they played in the playoffs all the way to the final, and just ran into a team that was equally as good as them and was just able to edge them out in the Stanley Cup final. It was just kind of one of those things. But at least from what I've seen, this definitely looks like a Panther team that can run it back and win the East again.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, and I'm not being biased. You watch these games, the stats are there to support everything we're saying. Not only that, the goalie tandem that we have right now between Bob and Stoli is excellent. I might get dragged for this, but I don't give a shit. I would compare this to Olmark and Swayman last year. Just the stretch that they're on right now. I'm not saying for the whole season. I'm just saying right now, the stretch they're on. It's looking good, and if they continue on this pace, this is going to be an absolute bloodbath of a playoff season. And like I mentioned to you earlier before we started the show, the NHL season as a whole this year has been one of the most balls to the walls seasons I've ever seen.
Yeah, this has been a good year to be a hockey fan. There's been an absurd amount of high-scoring games, and if you're a fan of goaltending and tight-checking games, maybe this isn't your brand of hockey, but if you're like me, I love high-scoring games. I love high-intensity games. No lead ever feels safe. This is my kind of season.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. These guys, there's so much energy that they bring to the game. Sam Reinhart, I can't say enough good things about him. He's just been absolutely incredible to watch. It's a season nobody expected him to have. And I'm not saying that nobody thought he was capable of it. It's just not something that he's generally known for.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's leading the team in points. He's got 66 points on the season. So,
well, you hear it talked about on panel shows all the time. Guys that have good hockey IQ and know the game well. Sam Reinhart is right at the top of that list. Every pundit that talks about Sam Reinhart talks about how well he sees the game and knows the game, and it's paying dividends for him. Finally, the puck's going in the back of the net when it's on his stick, and it's been a long time coming for him. He was drafted second overall in 2014 by the Sabres. It never really panned out well for him there. It seemed like he'd be more of a third, fourth line guy, and ever since he's come to Florida, he's just improved every single year, and now he's a bona fide superstar. And it's kind of ironic for the Panthers because the Panthers picked number 1 in 2014 and took Aaron Ekblad, so now they have the top 2 guys from that draft, and boy, is it looking great for them right now.
they're looking incredible, and I don't know what it is lately about people coming to Florida and having success there. Must be something in the water. I obviously must not have been drinking the same water when I lived there because
must have been the lower taxes.
Yeah. I can't say enough good things about this team. They've been so fun to watch. When they blew out Tampa the other day, it's always a good day when Tampa loses. Sorry, Tampa fans, but that really warmed my heart. So I've got really high hopes for this team, which can only mean that I'm probably going to be let down sooner or later because that's usually how my luck goes. But
well, I guess time will tell. I mean, they're certainly going to make the playoffs, and they'll be either, from what it looks like right now, they're either going to win the division, or they might finish with the best record in the conference, or they'll be second in the Atlantic. Either way, I would not be surprised to see a deep run from them, but in about 2 months, we're going to find out, so I can't wait.
Like I mentioned to you earlier, and I think we're on the same page with this, I'm hoping for a Vegas-Florida rematch in the Cup final, and I think at this exact point, the odds are in our favor for that, but we still got 2 more months of regular season to get through first before we even worry about that.
Yet. But speaking of playoffs, I do want to talk about a team that I personally think is going to make the playoffs this year. They've been flying under the radar a little bit this year. They've had spurts of excellence, and I think there's enough there that they might not make a deep run, but I can certainly see them in the playoffs, and that's the Detroit Red Wings. I know you're kind of in the same boat with me. It's been a pleasant surprise to see Detroit finally starting to show signs of coming out of this rebuild and ready to compete, and they're building something really good there, and it's looking like this year it may be enough to get them into the playoffs.
I'm right there with you. Hell, they won tonight in overtime against the Kraken. Ben Sherratt scored, I think it was like a minute into the game. Or not into the game, into the overtime period. I'll be over here. Sorry, I'm jet lagged. They've been really fun to watch lately. I've been seeing a lot of scrutiny online about the Gritty celebration, and I'm not not to get off topic here, but I'm not understanding why all the hate towards it all of a
Yeah,
sudden.
I'm indifferent on it. I think this game needs more personality, and I think that
Yes.
that Wallman celebration, I think that's more of what, or the game needs more of that. Rather, we need more guys with personality. If there's one thing you can always say about hockey players is that 75% of them really don't show enough personality on the ice, and not that that's a bad thing. Some of them are just serious players, no big deal. But this game needs a little more flair. That's how you bring in more fans and get the game spread out more. Is bringing some personality to it, and celebrations like that. Maybe the old timers don't like them, but that's what this generation of hockey is going to be. All these younger kids coming into the league now, they're going to bring that flair, that excitement to the game. So not only do I think the game needs more of that, but I think we're going to start seeing more of that as time progresses.
I certainly hope we start seeing more of it. Like you said, it brings a lot of personality to the game that the game's not known for having. And as far as old timers not being a fan of it, I don't want to sound
Futures
crude.
now.
I would say I don't want to sound crude, but nobody gives a shit if you don't like it. Okay, it's not the '60s anymore.
Yeah.
It's a different generation of hockey, and I think it's exactly what we want to see moving forward. With that being said, the team's looking real good right now. You got Larkin leading the team in points with 49. 24 of those are goals, and then you got Lucas Raymond right behind him. He's got 30 assists, and he's been doing pretty well for them too. I was actually just listening to Empty Netter's podcast this week, and he was a guest on their show. That was a pretty good one. They didn't really talk too much statistically. It was a lot of dicking off, but still good episode nonetheless. He's a good character. I think he's a good fit for Detroit. Another big thing as of late is Patrick Kane's return, which I think we are all glad to see. I'm not a Red Wings fan, but I do love Patrick Kane. And I should point out I don't dislike the Red Wings. I'm just not a Red Wings fan. But that's been big as of late is Kane's return. I'm not gonna lie, I have no idea what his stats currently are
I
since
don't
his
know what his
return.
stats are off the top of my head, but I did see he just hit his 800th career assist
Yes,
in today's game. So, good on him for that. When it's all said and done, I mean, he's easily on the Mount Rushmore of American hockey players. There's really no two ways about it. So, as for Detroit, hey, I'm right there with you. They're rolling along. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10, including winners of their last two. They had a couple stinkers last week against the Oilers and Canucks, but in fairness, a lot of teams have had stinkers against the Oilers and Canucks. And we're going to talk about the Canucks a little bit later because as we're recording this, it is President's Day, and the Canucks played a game against the Minnesota Wild earlier today, and it was a barn burner. So we'll talk about that in a while. But I wouldn't put too much stock into those tough losses that they had last week. They've been playing really great, consistent hockey, I would say most of the year. And I'm excited to see where it goes, but I do think there's enough there to get them into the playoffs. So we'll have to see how much that holds up when it's the middle of April, but we'll have that discussion at that time. We want to take this opportunity to mention our friends over at Buck a Puck for ALS. Buck a Puck for ALS is a not-for-profit organization founded by Toronto youth hockey players and moms who lost their coach to ALS in 2022. They've recently partnered with ALS Canada, and their goal is to raise $1 million towards a cure for ALS, or as it's often referred to, Lou Gehrig's disease. So how does it work? For every buck you raise, you shoot a puck. Whether it's at the rink, in the driveway, or on the lake, shoot your pucks, record it, and tag Buck a Puck for ALS. Participants who raise the most money will win amazing prizes, such as a coaching session with Toronto Maple Leafs assistant coach Dean Chinaweth, Toronto Marlies head coach John Gruden, Maple Leafs tickets, signed NHL jerseys, iPhones, Xboxes, and more. So score big in your community and visit www.buckapuckforals.com to register or donate today, and be sure to follow them on Facebook and Instagram at buckapuckforals. Okay, so Andrew, we have talked about this off air 1,000 times. We've mentioned it a few times on this show. We've been waiting for a fire sale to happen in Columbus. It hasn't quite happened yet, but the biggest piece of all the guys that need to be fired, it finally happened last week when the Jackets announced they relieved general manager Jarmo Kekalainen of his duties. Team president John Davidson will take over as interim GM until likely the end of the season. What are your immediate thoughts?
yay! Other than that, That's it. Those are my thoughts. It's been a long time coming. I don't want to discredit what he has done for the organization in years past, especially 2019. They had that good run, that unexpected run against Tampa in the first round of the playoffs where they swept them. So I don't want to discredit what he has done, but it just hasn't been working for him the last couple seasons. This was long overdue, and it's not just what they need, but it's a step in the right direction.
So it's funny, you mentioned what he's done for this team, and I actually have a perfect tweet from Cap Friendly. And this will go over exactly what he did in his 11 years. It was almost exactly 11 years to the date that he was the general manager of the Blue Jackets. In his 11 years as the GM of the Jackets, Jarmo Kekalainen made 79 trades. He drafted 74 players and signed 251 contracts totaling $1,176,000,000. $8,900 in total value. And what do the Jackets have to show for it? Literally fucking nothing at all. And that's a problem. You just mentioned that it was a long time coming for him to be fired. I think that's exactly right on the nose. It is so frustrating to me, as a hockey fan in general, how much leash this guy got. He was with the organization for 11 years. They had less than 10 total playoff wins, if I remember correctly, and they only won one playoff series in the entirety of that stretch, not counting the qualifying round against Toronto, because that wasn't technically a playoff matchup. Essentially, this team wasted the last decade of its existence, and the only positive that has come from it is that because the game has grown so much, they still have a lot of fans going to their game. They have some of the best attendance on average in the league, and that speaks volumes to the fans in Columbus. But by that same mark, these fans deserve so much better than what they received from the 11 years that Kekalainen was the GM, and this team needs a big turnaround this summer, and I'm glad that they finally made this firing, because this was the biggest thing that's needed to happen for this team to really get going in the right direction.
I'm right there with you. Like I said, this isn't going to solve all their problems, but this is the first step in the right direction that they need to take. And now I think it's going to, like we mentioned earlier on earlier episodes of the show, this offseason, it's going to start rolling downhill. They're going to start clearing house, and I think this is the official holy shit, it's coming.
And I think it's very important to note, sorry, I'll let you get back to that in a sec. It's very important to note that, like you said, there's good pieces there, but yeah, they need to clean house.
Absolutely. And like I said, I don't necessarily think the players on the ice are the problem. I mean, to an extent they are, but your front office is an absolute disaster. And that starts with the GM. So, like I said, step in the right direction. Like you had mentioned, these fans deserve so much more. Time and time again, they're selling out games left and right, and these fans are paying money to show up and watch this team just get absolutely destroyed day after day, game after game. So it's not fair to the fans. It's not fair to the players either, who have the potential to have amazing careers, and they're sitting here rotting in an organization who doesn't give a shit about them.
Yep. And I think as much as Kekalainen needed to go, John Davidson, the guy that hired him, also needs to be gone at the end of this season. And I totally think it was the right move to fire Kekalainen before the deadline, because you know with certainty that guy's not going to be here after this season. Don't let him set you up for failure at the deadline. And not that he would try and, undermine them, but go into this with a clean slate moving forward. Like I said, the Jackets have a lot of good pieces there. There's a lot of really good components that could make a great team here. You just need to clean house. You need a new coach. You need a new team president. You need a new GM.
Well, and you brought up the trade deadline thing with Kekalainen, and I'm glad you did, because I don't think him setting the team up, I don't think he was going to be at a point where he was going to do anything to screw the team over.
No, I don't think he's going to sabotage them.
No, but he wasn't going to do anything to benefit him. I'm willing to bet if he would have stuck around through the trade deadline, they weren't acquiring anybody before the trade deadline. It was just going to stay the same team it was, and they were just going to have the same results the rest of the way. And I'm not saying. Problem. I was going to. Go ahead. All right, let's do rock paper scissors. We can.
Go ahead.
All right. I'm not saying that one acquisition at the trade deadline is going to turn your whole season around anyway. It's not. But my point is, the guy's just going to sit there a lame duck and not do anything at the trade deadline. And that's one more thing they got to work on in the offseason now. So I agree with you. It's good that they got rid of him before the trade deadline.
Exactly. Yeah, he wasn't taking the team in any specific direction. If he was going to be their guy at the deadline, he was all over the place. He had no plan really for the deadline, and I think that's almost worse than having a bad GM is having a GM that just doesn't have any plan. I mean, they've just been spinning tires for the last 4 years. They haven't made the playoffs any of these years. It's been a mess there, and it's about time he's gone so they can finally start this. They can properly finish this rebuild. They're halfway through it, but they've just been spinning tires. They have a lot of really good players and the opportunity to make some great moves. They have a ton of cap space. They just need to get a guy that's committed to the team and committed to winning and who has a plan, because from what it sounds like, Kekalainen was almost interested in trying to buy at the deadline as if that would help the team. So that's a scary thought to think that he was going to mortgage some of the future for seemingly nothing this season.
Now, on a side note that's still related to the Blue Jackets, but has nothing to do with what we're talking about, I just wanted to point out I was watching the game the other night where Boone Jenner scored with 12 seconds left in the game to give him the win over the Sharks, and I screamed very close to like a little girl. So I thought that was really great.
You didn't go Boone like all the fans do.
Nah, see, I don't do that. It was the same thing in Boston. I wasn't.
You weren't chanting Took with.
Yeah, when he would make a big save, and don't you? Everybody knows that I absolutely love Tuukka Rask, but no, that's not me. I'll yell everything else in existence, mostly profanity, but I'm all forgetting
You're not
the
the
game.
guy
I just
that,
don't do
that
it.
yells all the players' names that sound like ooh.
Yeah, no, that's just not me. And I don't knock anybody who does it, but it's just not me.
Fair enough. So I before we move on, I wanted to mention the fact that this team can finally begin a healing process of sorts. I mean, we've said it 1,000 times now that there's pieces there. There's something there. They have cap space. They have great prospects. There's quite a few already established players on this team. Let's get a crew in here that can put something together with this and not just have a disorganized group on the ice.
I'm with you. It's hard to it's hard to talk too much on this because we're pretty much on the exact same page. So I don't really have a whole lot to counter you with because I mean you're saying what's in my head.
Yeah, we've both been bitching about this all season, so I think it's more like finally we get to say our piece on this now that it happened.
Yeah, and I mean, again, if nothing else, do it for your fans, man. They have such a loyal fan base there, and you and I witnessed it firsthand when we went to that game against the Hawks back in November.
Yeah.
That house was packed for that game.
Great.
And it was two of the worst teams in the league, and it was sold out. So, if nothing else, do it for your fans. They deserve better.
Speaking of the Hawks, Connor Bedard, we talked about his injury and how
and I
he's
called
be out
it
for a while, and you did call it. He came back about 3 weeks ahead of schedule. He's got 3 points in his first 2 games back, so good on him. And it's looking like now, since he's already back, I think that Rookie of the Year race is pretty well locked up. I don't think it'll matter what Brock Faber does the rest of the way. Now that Bedard's back and he's still scoring and he still leads the scoring race, I think this is pretty well done in his favor unless something catastrophic happens.
Yeah, I mean, he came back and he looks like he didn't even miss a day. He looks like the same Connor Bedard. So, like you said, the Calder Trophy is pretty much locked up. And again, as I mentioned in an earlier episode, I think there's a small bias there as far as the league goes towards Bedard. But he's absolutely deserving of it. But I mean, so is Brock Faber. I don't want to discredit what Brock Faber's doing.
I don't either, but in all reality, I think Brock Faber would have a better chance of winning the Norris this year than winning the Calder. I think Bedard, he's the only good player on a team that's so god-awfully bad. I think the fact that he's leading all rookies in scoring despite that, and he was able to come back 2-3 weeks ahead of schedule from an injury, I think that just speaks volumes about his character and his will to play, and assuming he's going to finish with the rookie scoring lead. So I think this Calder Trophy is all but his.
I'm right there with you, man. Should be a fun run the rest of the way. We'll see where it ends up, and I know we're going to talk about it once it's handed out in the summer. So
now, I don't know how we missed this on our show last week because it happened literally the night before. Not this past Saturday, but a week before this past Saturday, there was a game between the Senators and the Toronto Maple Leafs that ended with Ridley Gregg taking a slap shot into the empty net at the end of the game, and Morgan Riley from the Leafs absolutely hits him in the head with a devastating cross check. End result of that is a 5-game suspension for Morgan Riley. Luckily, it seemed like no serious injuries to Ridley Gregg, which is good to hear. Riley got 5 games suspended, and I believe has already served 4 of them. He tried to appeal the suspension, and if Commissioner Bettman rules that he'll take a game off of it, Morgan Riley would be eligible to play in the Leafs' next game. If not, he'll be playing later this week. We're way behind every other show on the planet with this, but what were your thoughts on the hit, the slap shot, the outcome, the suspension? What are you thinking?
So I've got some pretty strong opinions on this. As far as the actual slap shot into the empty net, that there's unwritten rules in hockey, and that's a pretty big one to break. It's pretty much common sense. You don't do that. I understand the energy on the ice. You're excited. You're getting the win, but you don't do that. Now, does it warrant a cross check to the head or the neck, especially of that caliber? Absolutely not. I think Morgan Riley's a punk bitch for that. It kind of pissed me off. I want to clarify. I 100% get and support going after the guy. That is absolutely warranted. Cross-checking him to the head, that's ridiculous. No place for that kind of shit. I mean, that anything to the head has the potential to be serious. So, no, I think that's bullshit. I think he's lucky that he only got 5 games for that, especially because when I heard they were doing an in-person here, and I thought he was getting at least 6 for that. But again, to an extent, I get it. You broke an unwritten rule. At the same time, go after the guy, rough him up, fine. You don't cross-check somebody to the head. That's horse shit.
Yeah, my thoughts on it is that, first of all, yeah, that's one of the big unwritten rules. I mean, the empty net goal, that's basically guaranteed. He's 20 feet from the net, just walk it, and you don't have to, drive a cruise missile through the back of the net. But the response from Riley, and again, he's a first-time offender as far as dirty hits like this go, so I'm assuming that's why he only got 5 games. I wasn't crazy about the response either. I think in a situation like that, you absolutely need to go after the guy. You need to rough him up, or, if you're cross-checking him, cross-check to the to the hip or, whatever, or try and get him to fight, try and get him to drop the gloves. But yeah, cross-checking him in the back of the head or side of the head, whatever it was, is not the appropriate response there. There's so many other ways they could have handled that would have been correct, and I certainly think that was definitely not the right choice. And I would also like to take this opportunity to say shame on Ryan Reeves for doing virtually nothing about it. It's the one thing this guy's good at. He can't play hockey worth shit, and it's the one thing that he's good at doing, and he goes out there and does literally nothing. If I'm the other players in that Leafs locker room, I'm pissed that our only guy who can fight goes out there and does literally nothing after one of our biggest rivals shows us up like that. That's the worst part of this for me. Aside from the cross check to the head being brutal, that's the worst part of this for me, is that there was freaking no response from the Leafs.
I'm so happy you said that. Ryan Reed, he did absolutely nothing after that, like you said, but he was quick as hell to start running his mouth in the post-game interview after that game, saying how Morgan Riley.
Oh, in my day, he'd be on the ice still. Yeah, I'm like, all right, calm down. You've been in the league for like 10 years.
Yeah, and you're irrelevant. You're on the Leafs. All you're good for is being a goon. You're other than that, you're irrelevant out there.
Well,
Nobody cares about
that up with being a giant sissy against the Ducks on Saturday night too. He had 10 opportunities to try and fight Radko Gudas and took none of them. He didn't fight anybody, from what I can recall. He was brought in to do one thing, and he's not doing the one thing they brought him in for. So just a really, really horrible look for the Leafs overall, but because they've been playing so well, it's kind of overshadowed that.
Yes, I agree. And the Leafs, and I know we're going to get into that shortly, primarily Austin Matthews, but yeah, the Leafs playing well has overshadowed it, but that was something that we couldn't not talk about. I've been dying to talk about it all week because it's really just pissed me off. It was a cheap shot. There's other ways to go after a guy. Yeah. I mean, that's why fighting's in the league. So,
and good on the Sens for not going ape shit and just making it an all-out, brawl, because that could have gotten really ugly. So good on them for holding their composure, but at the same time for Ridley Gregg, man, you got to understand. Sure, you're more than welcome to make a big cocky play like that, but you got to understand there's going to be a response, although it shouldn't have been that. But we'll move on here because we have to get into our tough look of the week, which is multiple tough looks. Who's that brought to us by?
Boy, you can't tell this was rehearsed, can you?
It wasn't.
Tough
That's
look.
the best part.
Yeah. As always, Tough Look is brought to you by Lightings Property Management out of Kenosha, Wisconsin. For all your lawn care, landscaping, and snow removal needs, give Lightings a call. They do it all.
That's the
What's
part
our
that's
tough
rehearsed.
look? That's the part that's rehearsed. But they're good to us, so we got to be good to them.
All right, let me get out my CVS receipt worth of tough looks here. All right, so the initial one, this was going to be the only tough look of the week, was the Nashville Predators 9-2 loss to Dallas earlier this week. That game from the get-go was bad. I think Dallas had 4 goals before Nashville had a shot, which is rough. Yeah. But we're going to get into the Preds in a little bit because after that happened on Saturday night, the Ducks suffered a 9-2 loss at the hands of the aforementioned Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Tampa Bay Lightning suffered a loss of 9-2 at the hands of the Florida Panthers. And the Vancouver Canucks this afternoon were up 5-2 against the Minnesota Wild they were up 5-3 going into the third period and lost the game 10-7. They allowed 7 goals in the third period against the Wild, and I just want to take this chance to shout out my Minnesota Wild for absolutely burning the building down in the third period and filling in the net. Hat tricks from Eriksson Ek and Kaprizov, 4-point night for Boldy. They've been looking to get their top guys going, and all 3 of them have been electric lately. If they can start getting some consistent goaltending, buckle up.
And I just want to point out to everybody that he read absolutely none of that off a stat sheet. That I was literally watching him read it just off the top of his head, or just speak it off the top of his head.
Oh man, that was such a fun game. We didn't watch the last half of the second period because we turned back. We had a friend over and we watched the end of the Bruins and Stars game today. So we had our friend over. We were just watching that. We flipped back to the Wild game, and it's like, holy shit, they just scored. They scored what ended up being 6 goals in 5.5 minutes at one point of the third period, or the end of the second through the beginning of the third, which is just unreal. So let's get back to our tough look here, which originally was going to be Nashville. They suffer that big loss, and then they go and beat St. Louis, which is a great response, but where do they go from here? I mean, we've talked about them wanting to trade or maybe needing to trade the goalie, and we don't want them to trade the goalie Saros, but if you're Barry Trotz and this is your team and you need to make a move at the deadline, are you buying? Are you selling? I mean, after a week that's on both ends of the spectrum like that, what the hell do you do?
It's tough to say because as far as trading out Saros, I mean, you have Askarov down in Milwaukee, but you don't want to take him away from Milwaukee with the absolute tear that they're on right now. It's tough to say. My philosophy, and this is probably an unpopular opinion, but ride it out, man. Just ride it out. I mean, what else are you doing at this point? I mean, no decision. There's going to be cons to whatever route they take. So, like I said, it's hard to say.
That's fair. And I think that's a perfect way to put it. I think standing pat is what they need to do because ultimately it doesn't look like, if they get into the playoffs, this doesn't really look like a team that that has what it takes to win the Stanley Cup, and I know any team can win once you get in. I mean, look at the Panthers last year, but this really does not look like a group that's going to go on a hot run and run through the entire league the next 4 months. I think standing pat at the deadline, if you think you can make the playoffs with this group, great, stick with it, but don't mortgage your future by trading away draft picks and prospects. And again, if you really think you can make it, you're not going to trade away your number one goalie. So I'm kind of with you there. I think they should stand pat, but between now and the trade deadline, if they start losing, 2 of 3 the next couple weeks, every 3-game section they're losing 2, I think that's when you might see them start to sell off some assets and just kind of look to reload for next year. Okay, so moving on, we're going to talk about a couple guys who have been on an absolute scoring tear this year. We're going to talk about Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews. We'll get to Connor first, who is at one point in this season was 67th in league scoring and is now 3rd in league scoring. He also leads the league in assists. Connor McDavid, 12 points in his last 4 games, which did include one game where he had 6 points, which is just unreal. It just seems like every time we
Gross.
watch this guy, there's literally nothing he can't do. Anytime you think there's a ceiling for him, he just bursts right through it. He's just such an incredibly talented player, and I think you could talk about this guy till you're blue in the face, but um, there's just no stopping this guy. It just, no matter what any team does, even the nights they get killed, it seems like he's got a couple points on the score sheet.
Yeah, this guy, no matter how you look at it, he's modern day Wayne Gretzky. The way he plays, his speed. He's an assist wizard. Good lord, guy's got 60 assists on the season. He's leading the team right now in points. I believe
Oh yeah, by a country mile.
yeah, I think he's got like 81 or 82 points.
Yeah.
And he's not even leading the team in goals. I think that's worth pointing out.
No, I think that honor
Zach
belongs to
Hyman.
Hyman or Draisaitl would have been my guess. Yeah, so it's
Yeah,
Hyman.
it's Hyman.
Okay.
Yeah, Hyman's got 32, according to this. Yeah, yeah. McDavid's got 81 points. Hyman's got 32 goals. And McDavid, I should point out, only has 21 goals.
Yeah, he's the ultimate playmaker. He is like a modern Gretzky. I mean, there's nobody he can't make a pass to. He'll make you open if you aren't open. He's just unreal, and I think we're really lucky as hockey fans to be living in this era where we get to watch arguably the most talented player in the history of this game do his thing.
That's exactly it. Don't be one of those fans. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the hockey community as a whole. Don't be one of those fans where you're so bitter against him being successful that you're not taking the time to appreciate watching this, because this is a once in a lifetime thing that you're seeing.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I technically twice in a lifetime if we include how Austin Matthews has been playing. But
I was going to say, speaking of players people get bitter about, you want to talk about a guy that's a generational talent. Austin Matthews leads the league in goals by a mile. He's 49 goals. He's got 6 hat tricks this season. In the same way McDavid can make guys open that aren't open, Matthews has never seen an angle where he couldn't score from. This guy's shot is lethal. He's just so good. His release is so good. He's great on the power play. He's great on 5-on-5. He's got an excellent one-timer. His wrist shot release is just unreal. I mean, he's so good at scoring goals that you look at his face after he scores and he doesn't even look excited anymore because he's just expecting them all to go in. He's just such a gifted player, and it's really cool to see what he does. I mean, it doesn't look difficult for him. He gets open. He finds ways to get open, and he's got guys like Marner and Nylander out there with him that are going to get him the puck, and he just does not miss.
yeah, he's insane. And when back to my thing about don't be so bitter you can't appreciate him, that's where I'm struggling too, because as a Bruins and a Panthers fan, I do not like the Toronto Maple Leafs at all. And I never wish them success. But that's just out of rivalry. Austin Matthews, I mean, God, what's he at? He's at 49 now, I believe, for goals.
49. He's on pace for 75 goals, which hasn't happened since 1993. And
Yeah.
in 93, it was Teemu Selanne and Alexander McGillney who both put up 76 goals that year, which is unreal that 2 guys did that in 1 year. But I really hope Matthews continues on this tear, because I would love to see someone get 70 goals.
Yeah. It's also worth noting that he has 73 points with 49 goals and 24 assists. So a little unreal. He's got 6 hat tricks now on the season. He's the first to do it since Mario Lemieux back in the 90s. Just absolutely unreal. Like I said earlier, the hockey that we are seeing this season, not just with the Leafs, but league-wide, is absolutely insane. And if you're not letting yourself enjoy that, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're choosing to be stubborn and being a curmudgeon about this, it's got to suck to be you, because this is some of the best hockey that the planet has ever seen. I mean, this is just so exciting, and I really can't wait for the international play to start next year and at the Olympics in 26, because there are some really great players in the NHL right now, and I cannot wait to see these U.S.-Canada matchups. They're going to be so great.
I mean, that's one thing I'm excited for. We're going to have Austin Matthews on Team USA, so I'm ecstatic about that. So, I mean, more than likely, that's where the captaincy is going for that team as well. So,
yeah, I think once Tavares is done, I would think it's going to be Matthews, or But that's a team that they got to figure out something for the defense. They got too much talent to not be succeeding in the playoffs. They got to get consistent goaltending and get somebody other than Morgan Riley that can play defense on that team. And I'm not talking about Jake McCabe, because he's not the guy that pushes you over the top. He's a great defenseman, but they need much more than just him if they're going to do any damage.
God, man, Tyler Bertuzzi is just hideous. This guy looks like he would rob you. Sorry, I'm just.
I was going to say that was not the direction I thought you were going at all. I thought you were going to say he's having a bad season. I didn't know you were going to call him up.
No. Well, no, I didn't even mean to bring him up. I was just, I was looking over Matthew's stat sheet over here, and this picture they have of him, it's got him and Marner, and then Bertuzzi, and Bertuzzi is just, oof, yeah, great player though. Just little rough around the edges. He looks like he'd be the burglar in Home Alone 4.
Oh no.
Yeah. But I digress.
Let's move on here. We talked about one of your teams earlier, the Florida Panthers, who by all accounts are just having the season of a lifetime. There's another team that you like slightly more than them that plays in Boston, Massachusetts, and since the All-Star break, they have been anything but good. They are 2-5 since coming out of the All-Star break, and that has included losses to the likes of Calgary and Washington, who are struggling this year, as well as LA, who's been just a crashing plane the second half of this season. You watch almost all their games. You know a hell of a lot more about the team than I do. What are you seeing that's so vastly different now compared to the start of the season when it seemed like they couldn't lose?
There's something missing chemistry-wise. The first thing I want to point out is David Pastrnak leads the team in everything. Goals, assists, points, it's all David Pastrnak.
Well, he's their best player.
Yeah, and I'm not denying that at all. I'm not seeing a lot of step up from your usual big names on that team. Charlie McAvoy, Charlie Coyle, Brad Marchand. It's just, and if I'm being honest, I think they came into the season, they were highly motivated. It's our first year without Bergeron. How different is this going to be? We can't let this affect us. If I'm being 100% honest, I think not having Bergeron is starting to take a toll on the team. I really, truly believe that. And I'm not faulting Brad Marchand for it, because I think he's doing fine as the captain.
But when you lose a guy that's 60% on the faceoff, eventually you have to expect some regression.
Oh, absolutely. There's just, like I said, something chemistry-wise is not there, and I'm having a hard time figuring out what it is. The goalie tandem, and there's a lot of inconsistency, more so on the part of Linus Ullmark than Jeremy Swayman. Honestly, you and I talked about it earlier. If it wasn't for Swayman today, the Bruins would have lost that game like 10-2.
Yeah, so allowing 45 shots on goal is usually not a winning formula, but I'm sure they're glad they walked away with the 2 points today.
Yeah, no, like I said, a win is a win, but I was seeing people on Facebook and all social media and online saying, "Great win, boys." No, it wasn't. It was barely a win. It's not something to be proud of. You looked bad out there. It's not a good look. The last several games since we came back from the All-Star break, this team's been tough to watch. It's like they just stopped caring once the All-Star break rolled around. Like they thought they were going to be able to just skate away with the rest of the season and be fine.
Now, my question for you, and again, I don't follow the Bruins closely enough to know this off the top of my head. Have Matt Patra and John Beecher been playing still? I feel like I haven't seen them on a score sheet or a highlight in months.
No, Patra went down. They sent him down.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me just confirm that real quick. I'm pretty sure. I know they sent him down. I don't know if they called him back up.
Remember when? Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
And what about Beecher? I feel like he hasn't played a game for them in a while. And at the start of this year, when they had that great run, those were the names I was seeing. Was boy, these two prospects from Boston are really helping them fill out the depth down the middle that they lost with Krejci and Bergeron leaving.
So yeah, Beecher, I haven't seen anything from, and he hasn't hardly played. And who's this guy that we got? Oh, what's his name? Bruiser LaRue. Justin Brazeau. He got his first NHL goal today, and they just inked him to a contract too today. So I'm hoping. I mean, he actually looked pretty good today. So I mean, aside from his goal, so I have high hopes for that. But we'll see where that goes. But I mean, you got, let's see, we got Danton Heinen has actually been a surprisingly good presence this year. I wasn't super excited when they announced he was coming back this year. Um, but I'm getting a little bit off topic. Yeah, so it's showing that Petrus is down or is on the roster right now, but I haven't seen him, so I don't know what's going on there. But we got guys that their name you hear the names like Kevin Shattenkirk, James Van Riemsdyk. Like these are what at one point were household names in the NHL, and now they're just kind of I don't want to say lame ducks, but they haven't done anything for us, especially since the All Star break.
Yeah,
So
the Bruins did put quite the squad together this year. If they had this team 10 years ago, it'd be one of the best teams in the league.
right, and just to give you an idea of how credible their roster actually is, they still have Milan Lucic on uh on their roster.
No, I just saw that he's not going to be returning to the team, though.
No,
I
he's
don't know
not.
if it was 32 Thoughts I heard it on, but he is not going to be rejoining. No, it was Daily Faceoff with Frank Saravalli. He announced that he's not returning the team, or the club announced it. So that's the right thing. That situation is just. We're not going to even get into that a little bit, but that whole domestic dispute thing he had, it's a mess. So I think not having him on the team is the right thing to do. The club has struggled enough the past few weeks. You don't need to add fuel to the fire by bringing drama into it.
Yeah, but with that being said, though, we won't speak too much on the Lucic situation. It's not really our place as of right now. But back to the Bruins' performance as of late, lackluster performance, I should say, as of late. Um, the defense has been falling apart. That's one of the biggest things, and it doesn't make sense because on paper, our defense is pretty solid. So I'm not understanding it. We got two good goaltenders. We have a Vezina goaltender on our team, and yet right now he's the most inconsistent of the two. So I don't know if it's a locker room thing. It's tough to say, but it's getting really hard to watch.
Watching their game against Dallas today, the chemistry just seemed terrible. I can't tell you. I lost count of how many horribly missed passes there were in the offensive zone, how many passes out to the point where nobody was there, and so puck comes out into the neutral zone. And I spent most of the third period watching Charlie McAvoy chase the puck back down the ice because somebody threw it from behind the goal line out to the blue line and he wasn't there. That's got to stop for Boston, a team that is usually known for playing a really well-rounded game. To just be throwing passes left and right with nobody home to pick them up it's really tough to watch, and it's, as a fan of the team, I can't imagine it's very exciting.
No, it's not. And I'll be the first to admit as far as today's game goes, I had to watch the highlights before we started doing the show because I was
On a plane.
flying home from Los Angeles when they were playing, so I didn't get to actually watch the game as it happened. But it's just sloppy play all over the ice. So that I don't know what's going on in that locker room, but they need to figure it the fuck out. And Boston fans, when they get angry, things get ugly. So mostly between themselves.
I was gonna say.
I would say if you remember the
the
2019 Stanley Cup Final Game 7, they were beating the shit out of each other in the stands.
No, they didn't burn down the city like Vancouver.
Correct. And I'm a Bruins fan, but I'm not from Massachusetts, so they're a different breed over there.
You're saying
Take
that
how you
you're
want.
safe from collateral damage then.
Absolutely, yes. So, like I said, they're my team. I love them no matter what, but they got to get their shit together. This is ridiculous. And I don't want to see it get to a point where they tank themselves into a low seed in the playoffs or just shit the bed and miss the playoffs. I don't see that happening at this point. But
I think there's too much talent there. I mean, even if they falter, they're going to back into a playoff spot regardless.
I hope so, man. It's just aggravating. They had such a hot start to the season, and then to see them come out of the All-Star break and play like a high school team, it's rough to watch. And so, I mean, even the other night when they honored Brad Marchand,
I thought they honored him today.
no, they honored him the other night too. I forgot what the fuck that was. I forgot what that was for.
I
Or
say I
no,
could
they
have
didn't
sworn
honor
they did
him.
it.
No, they didn't honor him. It was his 1000th game
Oh,
the
I
other
got
night.
you. Okay.
There was no emotion or motivation on that team anywhere on the ice. It was a very boring game. It wasn't exciting. Marchand himself didn't really do anything. It it was just a tough look all around.
That was like the Penguins retiring Yager's number, and the Pens go out, fall flat on their face, lose 2-1.
Yeah, but we got some pretty cool remarks out of Yager and
Yeah, that was really
his
fun to see him in a
19-year-old
Penguins
girlfriend.
uniform. I'm not a Penguins fan by any stretch of the imagination, but it was fun to watch him and Sid and Gino and Letang get out on the ice, and Gino wearing the mullet. They all had a lot of fun with it, and Yager was like watching a little kid in a sandbox. He was just having the time of his life, so that was really cool.
Yeah, no, I think everybody liked seeing that. I've been watching all the videos on Instagram. It's been great. So
Final thing we want to get into, we usually don't talk too much about politics and stuff, but I think this is important because it does relate back to hockey, is a group of 17 current and former Russian NHL players penned a letter to the International Ice Hockey Federation with the goal of trying to get the Russians back into international play. I think specifically they were, trying to get back into the World Championship this year in what is it, April or May, and the reason that they are not allowed in these tournaments as of the last few years is because of the ongoing situation in Ukraine. And of course, like I said, we don't want to talk politics. I don't want to get into that aspect of it, but we kind of have to because it relates to hockey. What are your thoughts, and do you think that the Russians should be allowed in international play?
yes, I think they should just do a Ron Sano. Just yes, and then we'll just leave it at that. Yeah, I do think they should be allowed in. I don't like that extremely talented players, especially out of Russia. I mean, Russia produces some of the best hockey players in the world, aren't getting to showcase themselves on the international stage because of decisions that are being made by a government that these players have nothing to do with themselves. I mean, that they're other than the fact that they are just from Russia, they're being punished based off the. And I know it's not the players that are technically being punished; they're punishing Russia as a whole.
Which I
But
think is total bullshit because you're penalizing players from a game for something that a corrupt. You're penalizing the players for something that's the fault of a corrupt government overseas, and I think that's horseshit. This has nothing to
yes,
do with the players.
exactly, and that's exactly my point. Why are we bringing the players into this? Let them. They have nothing to do with this. They're just trying to go to work.
And
I
they
mean,
don't want to make
essentially.
any comments on the matter because, a lot of those guys still have family overseas in Russia. They make a comment speaking out against the war. There's a good chance that what'll happen to their families with how it is over in Russia. And again, I don't want to
Absolutely.
dive into politics because that's not what this show is at all. But I think it's absolutely disgusting that these wonderfully talented players are being held back from international competition for something that is not their fault at all.
Yeah, you said that a lot better than I would have because I'm trying to word it so I'm not going on a profanity laced rant right
And
now.
I'm trying to hold myself back so I don't get my blood pressure too high, but it is really annoying. As you said, some of the best players in the world are from Russia. Alex Ovechkin, who may finish his career as the league's leading goal scorer in NHL history, to have players like him, to have players like Kucherov, Kaprizov, Kuznetsov, a lot of really talented players not in international play because of something that's totally unrelated to hockey, I think is completely unfair. They should be allowed in the World Championships. They should be allowed in the World Junior Championships. They should be allowed in the Olympics and so on. I think, and they're not even allowed in the Four Nations face-off, and that's so stupid. It's so stupid that a sports league, it's a fucking game, and these guys aren't allowed to play because of something that is 0% their fault.
That's exactly it. They're trying to punish Russia. The actual Russian government doesn't give a shit about this. The only people you're actually punishing out of this are the players who have done nothing wrong. Again, which we've said multiple times now already. But it's horseshit. It's not fair to them, and most importantly, I shouldn't say most importantly, but in addition to not being fair to the players, it's not fair to the fans, both of the NHL and on an international basis. It's horseshit.
Yeah, it's brutal. I mean, the last time Russians were in international play was the last time Russian NHL players were in international play was what, the World Cup in 2016. So
Yeah.
8+ years, and I think they were at the World Championships, I guess, the last few years before the Ukraine war started. But
They didn't let him participate in the Olympics, at least not like
yeah,
under
no,
Russia.
what was it? The 2022 Olympics? Yeah, it was. What was the Olympic athletes from Russia or whatever they called that group? But it couldn't just be Russia. And again, all of these things, not just hockey, but all of those winter sports, they're fucking games. These athletes should not have their lives impacted because of a corrupt government that has nothing to do with their sport. I think that's total garbage.
Yeah. It's similar to the separation of church and state. Keep the government and the game separate.
Yeah, and I apologize to those listening if you weren't kind of expecting this to go on such an aggressive tangent here, but this was something that as soon as I saw it come out, I knew instantly I had to make a comment because I felt very passionately about this for a couple of years now. That Russian athletes are being held hostage by these leagues for something that just has nothing to do with them. It's just such a messed up situation.
Well, and aside from that too, you mentioned Kuznetsov, Kaprizov, Ovechkin, guys like that.
I should mention Vasilevsky.
Vasilevsky, yeah, especially with Ovechkin. A lot of those guys are younger, like Kaprizov. Vasilevsky's not. He's not. He's not 22, but he's not old. But I mean, my thing is, these guys aren't getting any younger. And we're not getting to see them showcase their skills on the international stage. We've seen Ovechkin do it before, but he should still be able to do that now, especially coming towards the end of one of the most historic careers in NHL history. It's just ridiculous.
Yep. So with that, I think we're gonna wrap the show up. Again, that was just something I knew I had to bring up. It's something I wanted to talk about from the moment I saw it. So. I'm glad we did, but we're going to wrap the show up here. Andrew, thank you for coming on and doing the show after your long day of travel. I know you want to get rested up and everything, but I'm glad we got to do this. There was quite a few things we wanted to talk to. I felt it was a little more of an unconventional show compared to what you should expect from us going forward, but it was just such a chaotic week. It seems like every week has just been kind of crazy the last few weeks, so picked the perfect time to start doing a podcast, but also with that in mind, it's been just so nuts every week.
Yeah, it's we definitely had to hit the ground running, which is not what I was expecting. I thought it was going to be a little more lax than this, but I have no complaints. I do especially want to say thank you to everybody who has tuned in so far. This has been really fun for both of us, as we hope it has been for you, and we're looking forward to keeping this thing going for a long time. It's been a lot of fun, and we got big plans in store for it. Brian, do you have anything else before I give my little spiel here?
No, I think you touched on everything I wanted to. I do want to thank everybody that listens. It's definitely something that I knew we would have fun with, but I didn't think we'd get so many, listeners right away. And I'm not saying we have hundreds of thousands, but we've had a couple hundred people listen to this now, and I think that's really great. And so we appreciate every single one of you that is tuned in for this, because we want you to be as passionate about listening to this show as we are about doing it. So thank you very much for tuning in.
Nicely said, sir. With all that being said, make sure for next week's episode, you guys tune in, where we will have our first guest, who, for this exact moment, will remain nameless. We will release that information later on this week, but we're pretty excited about it. He's got a good hockey background. It should be a really good, fun show, and we're really looking forward to having him on, so you guys aren't going to want to miss it.
And don't forget, a week from Friday, we are going to be in Nashville, so you will want to be following us on social media, because we are going to do some stuff while we're over there. So, Andrew, why don't you go ahead and tell them how they can do that?
You can find us on our social media pages on Facebook and Instagram at Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast, as well as Twitter or X or whatever the hell you want to call it, at Fresh Ice Hockey. With that being said, thank you everybody for tuning in this week. We're excited for next week. We'll see you then. Take care and comb your hair.